So before we jump into this episode of the Growth Seat, I just want to make a quick introduction to Ty Gary, who's our CEO. And we sat down and we decided that there's probably a lot more we can unpack with the Growth Seat. We want to try and bring a more conversational approach to how we're going about this podcast. We, I suppose, have exposure to a lot of customer behavior, positioning, systems, operations, growing businesses. We have 35 clients doing over $1 billion in revenue. So I would like to think that there's been a lot of learnings over the last 8 years and seeing businesses and the clients that we're working with go through their fair share of trial and error alongside ourselves. So the idea of these conversations is quite simple. We want to try and focus on less surface level marketing talk and looking at it from a real operator perspective, try and bring some practical areas of discussion that might allow you to, I suppose, change some things in your business or implement some things in your business or just make you think differently. And if you're interested about growing a business in a more measurable way, in a more predictable way, I think that's what we will hopefully bring to the table over the coming weeks. So the first topic that we're going to unpack is really to do with impressions and online impressions in particular. I think from a business standpoint today, it's changed quite a lot over the years. A lot of our first impression now is done online. So yeah, excited to chat to you about this, Tig, and we'll unpack the topic in more detail.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Great to be here. I think the same is true with digital as it is in real life, and that first impressions last. I think naturally sometimes in a discussion like this, you can have an urgency to sort of dissect maybe the latest and greatest AI hack or tactic. For us, it's practical is probably the key word. Business owners, people in leadership positions are extremely busy already. For us, what we'd love to do both today and in future conversations is trying to distill stuff into a really practical sense of what you could do in your business. And I think no better starting point than today's discussion, which is ultimately around first impressions from a digital perspective and ultimately the foundations of that digital offering in your business.
For sure. So let's zoom it out and speak about what would first impressions look like probably many years ago. Like things that come to mind on my side would be probably your sales meeting someone face to face in a boardroom, a phone call, the main pitch. I think the relationship has drastically changed in today's world, but anything that you would add in terms of what it probably looked like back, there's
Yeah, even before, I'd even go nearly a step before that with a first impression could be like who you were being referred by or like the person who you were being introduced or connected with and the sort of talk track that person would give about you as an individual or your business. So that first impression could be almost preset before, maybe that prospect or potential person you wanted to meet had any idea who you were. They couldn't actually do more research. They had to rely 100% on the trust of that person's word who was talking to you about it. So if that if you had a bad reputation, that could be terrible. But in any way you had a bit of confidence and you did good work, you could be coming in with all bells going in terms of you'd be coming in with a really great impression, and no one could fact check that. They had to rely on that person, which was probably a nice place to be once you had a bit of confidence in your business. Ultimately, it's certainly not the world we live in now. While referrals or a referrer can still have an impact in a relationship, people are going to speed research you and in no time whatsoever, and they'll also add that to their own judgment of you and your business.
Yeah, for sure. Not every business has a Don Draper from Mad Men to walk in and impress straight off the bat. I know
Certainly
it's
not.
a show that you're a big fan of as well, but I think that's the era that my mind goes back to when I think of the old school way of making an impression. And yeah, we don't have all of that luxury of a Don Draper. So looking at how things have changed now, and I know some businesses are probably, or industries are maybe more progressive when it comes to this. You look at, I think, the B2B SaaS industry and obviously e-commerce businesses that are selling online. Well, they're obviously going to be the first adopters to this because they don't have a choice. Their choice is that they're an online business and it's make or break for them. So I think, some of the topics that I suppose we've had the luxury of working with a huge amount of very large e-commerce brands and a lot of SaaS companies as well. Both of us come from SaaS backgrounds where we lived in Austin, Texas and worked in SaaS companies. And it's the same with other directors in our company who come from that SaaS background. So, very fairly young into our own careers, we were probably getting exposed to this a lot more. But I think there's a huge amount of industries that maybe haven't adopted to this fast enough. I think you have had exposure to them, being law firms, accountancy firms, manufacturing companies, probably more legacy businesses that haven't maybe felt the need to make that change or that leap into the online world, because the business has grown year on year, and it's just the way things are done. I think construction and engineering is probably another one as well, where we're starting to see, probably since COVID, we're starting to notice that a lot of these legacy businesses are really adopting to the idea of saying, do you know what, we can't actually afford to have a poor website, a poor LinkedIn presence, to not have reviews, testimonials, case studies living on our website, to not showcase our talent and our team or our process. And I think, that's why first impressions in the online world now is becoming a bit more of a hot topic around, okay,
Yeah.
what are the key things we need to do? What
They're
comes
all
to mind on your side when you think of these more legacy businesses and how they should approach this?
Yeah, like a few things. One, it's like, to pick up on your last point, it's all just so within your own control as a business. So like they are quick, like things to implement. Not I don't mean days or sometimes even weeks for the project, but in terms of like practical ways to improve your business, there's stuff that are so within your control. Companies would have, in maybe more traditional industries, wouldn't have focused on them. I would say definitely before COVID, because maybe they felt they didn't need to. Maybe some of the conversations we've had many times over the years, when what's that tipping point, is probably like a good sort of one to double down on. A lot of conversations I've had with people, it's when the tipping point is when a business has, let's say, done an amazing service or has a great product line and they're really happy customers, but then they found some new, smaller, in their opinion, competitor has come along, maybe locally, or at least they're competing for the same market, and now they're winning out from a digital perspective. That could be being at the top of Google. It could be even just the brand and prestige of how they come across. It could be that they're just doing a better job of showcasing their customer stories across. That tends to, what we found anyways, that tends to be a tipping point for companies where they're saying, how are they being perceived as, the most premium in the market? We've been here for 20 years. We have 1,000 happy customers. We've X, Y, and Z. And again, while I've simply in the moment, it's an easy enough fix, but you do have to have a focus and give attention to it. So I guess that is definitely, happening with I'd say more businesses than not, but I'd say with yourself, or you probably speak with more clients or more prospects even than myself, and businesses every day. You're probably still finding that we just assume every single business has digital at the forefront, even if it's not their main sales channel. Anything that surprised you of why people are still either hesitant to do it, maybe is a good starting point.
Yeah, I think it's the overwhelm of probably where to start. I think, there's a lot of founders and CEOs that I would be speaking to on a weekly basis that their business has grown year on year from when they first started the business from a lot of those offline methods. And I think they're, I suppose, becoming aware of the importance of how much online is starting to play its part. And it's probably the overwhelm of like, okay, where do we even start with this? And I just probably speak to the people that still have what we consider a brochure site. If you have a brochure site, you've got a brochure site. You're going on and there's no real thought process going into it. But you have to remember that, going on to any website is, you're still going to have some level of emotion to that particular company and that online experience. And if the website isn't landing those, what we call trust infrastructure, if it's not bringing that trust infrastructure, well, then they're likely going to go to one of your competitors' websites. And if they're showcasing, as I said, reviews, case studies, your process, your team, if they're highlighting all of those key attributes that are going to get someone excited about working with you, well, naturally, they're going to be more inclined to book a discovery call with them than they are with you. So I think it's a bit of a non-negotiable in today's world. If you want to stay competitive in your industry, that you have to, first of all, start with the website and say, this is our home base. It's what represents us. There's lots of strands that come off the back of that, but that's what I would encourage anyone who's maybe stuck in that mindset of like, where do I start with all of this? I'm hearing things like I need to get online lead generation set up, and I need to start to grow my pipeline online, and I need to have a CRM system, and I need to set up my tracking and analytics. These are all really important things, but if you don't have the key foundational element at the start, which what we would say is the starting point is your online brand, you have the right brand to that represents you online, and then how that is portrayed through a website. I think that's a really key starting point.
Yeah, I think
So yeah, that would
yeah,
be the
the key
main
thing
thing.
you said is like it's a trust infrastructure, isn't it? It's not just one thing. Like naturally, you can chat about a website because it's a focal point, and a focal point gives you a chance to either come together as a team or with someone from an outside or an external party to come in and use that as a focal point to really elevate the look, feel, design, messaging of who you are and what you do. Naturally, that bleeds into stuff then that is more either customer facing or from a prospect perspective, different sales and marketing assets. It bleeds into other ways that you can elevate how you communicate. And without that, sometimes just, you have so much to do, you don't actually have that starting point, and ultimately then, that leads to procrastination and nothing getting done. So I think, naturally think of it as how can you build trust in a sort of that almost architect your trust in that sort of infrastructure way that you've referenced. But, what is the starting point? It's like, again, in a building site, it's like sort of starting from the main foundations, and you build out from there. And again, your website gives you that focal place to say, naturally, you're not going to elevate, make your LinkedIn profile or something like that go from a 2 to a 10, and everything else is then, still a little bit more disappointing from your perspective. So that is, I think, a really, again, simple, practical way just to think and start about it. If you don't feel digitally, again, I think one of the tipping points, which I referenced earlier, is if you feel your digital representation of your business or your service is not the same as what you would do if a client was sitting across from you, I think that's normally a telltale sign that, again, you want to evoke that sort of premium feel, if that's sort of the angle you're going with, or efficient or responsiveness. Again, it depends on the market you're in. But if that doesn't it's not represented in how you visually communicate and how you message, again, it's a clear targeted way of how you can improve your business as a whole through the lens of digital first.
For sure, yeah. I think people think buyers are logical online as well, but they're actually not that logical online. You land on a website and you're going to instantly feel, as I said, some level of emotion. You're going to feel trust. You're going to feel doubt. You might feel some confusion. I feel like a lot of websites today, they're too cluttered and there's too much information, and you have to be really tactical about that prospect experience, is what we call it, as around what online journey you're going to actually bring this user on. How are you going to guide them through your website? So it's nearly like chapters in a book. You're not hitting them with everything all at once. You obviously, other emotions that you might feel would be professionalism is another big one. A level of confidence in that particular company being the right partner for you, or the right vehicle for you, whatever it is that, like, typically, why do we buy a product or a service from someone? It's usually to solve a pain that we are facing in our business, or it's an outcome that we're looking to achieve in our business. So it comes from pain, or it comes from a gain that you want as well. But then you can also feel like uncertainty on a website as well. So these are all emotions. And I think you almost judge a business subconsciously without even knowing it. And, there's enough data released on this. There was a research study that I read into only 2 weeks ago that it's a big data and analytics company, but they did a survey with and a research study on about 2,500 businesses. What they found was that 81% of prospects are making that decision. Are they going to book a sales call with someone just by looking at someone's website? So it's a real telltale sign that it's not, I suppose, acceptable enough to just say, we're fine with our brochure site. Sure, we win all of our clients through referrals and word of mouth. You're never going to know if there could be an increase in your pipeline or your sales efforts if you don't. How can you experience that if you had a better website, so
Yeah, you
I
don't
wouldn't
know
rest
why
on
the
it,
right
is the
buyers
main point.
didn't. Yeah, you don't know why the right buyer purchase or convert with you. You don't get a survey back. So it's like you just stack the chips in your favor. And again, it's specific to the industry, the market, the geography you're in terms of how you want to build that perception. So take car insurance, which we work in with our clients. What the consumer is expecting there is not this like amazing customer experience from a digital perspective. You're probably looking for speed and the fastest and reliable quotes. And everything should be emphasizing that, from the subtleties of how you visually communicate to the process in which you bring people through, to the efficiency of that. Maybe compare that to something that's a much deeper and a more educational led sale. That's going to be, that might work to your disadvantage. So all of these are small subtleties that sort of should bleed into your sort of digital presence. And, like for example, the element of, obviously every website would need the basics, you're like a really fast load time, for example, but there's just loads and loads of things that can just impact why someone would buy or convert on your site that you don't get told about. So you have to go in with sort of that initial hypothesis. Some of it will be relatively self-explanatory. Some of it deserves, I think, a little bit more thinking time. And then from that, you build obviously that sort of focal point. And obviously, like anything, you test and you iterate and you try and improve it over time based on the results that you're getting. But again, back to the start, it's such a, it's not to say it's it's simple, not easy. It's simple to know sort of to make the improvement. It's not always easy to say you can, turn around an amazing new digital experience in a week or two. Far from it sometimes, unfortunately, but it is a simple way to take back control of where and how you can improve elements of your business and that digital offering ultimately.
Agreed. Yeah. I think speed is a really important part of, improving that online presence. I would highly recommend anyone who's listening to this. There's so many speed tests you can use now online. You just type in website speed test and there's a whole variety of them that you can test. But if your website isn't loading in 1 second, you've actually lost the attention of that person. And we have enough studies on this. All of our clients' websites now are hosted in the cloud where a lot faster speed times are available. So for us, it's really important that, I think speed, even for myself, we've grown up more in the online world just from our age demographic, but it would actually create a level of anxiety for me. Like if I go on into a website, if I'm buying something and the load time is 2 or 3 seconds, I'll click off straight away. I think there's a lack of patience there as well on my side, but it does give me that level of anxiety to not have a level of trust in that particular business. But I think everything online trains people to expect, I would say, it's speed, clarity, simplicity, and smoothness. If I was to bring it down into 4 key things that I would suggest you'd be really hyper aware of: speed, clarity, simplicity, and smoothness.
Yeah, to maybe tie in, ultimately people are doing this for a business rationale, so you want to invest in this or improve this to have a positive business outcome. So again, if you're reflecting and considering it within your own business, it's you're not doing this just to tick the box. You want it to have an uplift, whether that's in leads or in conversions and whatever makes sense for your own business. And again, maybe the evolution from a website perspective is take SEO or take showing up in AI search results. All of these are tied and correlated into your website. So naturally, we've been chatting about some of that perception side of it, of how you visually communicate and why a buyer might not convert. But think of it almost again as that sort of like a tractor. Your website's going out and it's like pulling back people into your website. When done right and when done poorly, it just lives completely on an island. So again, the form and function can, live like side by side. Even again, when you do people spend as long reading every word on a website, on a services page or content or a blog page compared to 5-10 years ago? No, probably not. But that's not to say you shouldn't still give the necessary time and attention to your content hierarchy or how those pages are built and developed. While the visitor might not read every word of it, it acts as a way to sort of, scour the web and bring in relevant searches and visitors. So again, these things they don't live, they live in unison, in terms of increasing the look and the feel and that side of it. And also as a way to, at the same time, be looking at, okay, how can this serve the business as much as possible, which is getting potential buyers onto our site who don't already know about us. So I think, certainly not separate.
Yeah, 100%. Well, before we move on to the next topic, we'll just do a bit of a, I suppose, roundup for anyone who's listening around. What are some key things that you should be asking yourself? And feel free to chip in here. There's a few that come to mind for me. If you feel that there is room for improvement with your site, which again, I would like to think you're company aware, not self-aware, but company aware or brand aware as to where the brand is. But just some quick fire questions that I would suggest asking yourself is, what's the first thing that you notice when you land on your website? So if you go onto your website, what's the first thing you notice? Can you tell within the first 5 seconds what a business actually does, what your business actually does? And test this not just with your own site, but with many sites. You'd be surprised as to, I can almost guarantee you, if you go onto all your competitors' sites, like, can you tell exactly what they do in 5 seconds? But then try it in a different industry, a completely unique industry to yourself. And it's crazy how many businesses aren't able to articulate who they are within the first few seconds. Does your website affect how much you trust a business? Trust is a massive part of this. And I think once you start objectively looking at other people's websites, you can start putting it through your own lens as well. What instantly makes a website feel outdated? So when you look at a website, what makes it feel outdated? I think it's one thing that David, our head of brand, when he's speaking to our clients, he's trying to make them aware as to how drastically things have evolved in a very short space of time. Like websites now, with the utilization of AI, and moving away from probably more of these, it's not just legacy industries, it's legacy CMS platforms. Like even the how a CMS has evolved. I remember 10 years ago, we were building websites all on WordPress. It's not to say that I'm not going to crap on WordPress. We still build websites on WordPress, but there's so many, I would say, more efficient ways of building sites outside of WordPress on other CMS platforms now, depending on your industry. So I think that's changed quite a lot as well. Another one that would be your mobile experience. I think the mobile side of an online experience is so much more important. And we sometimes focus just on the desktop and the laptop, but we neglect the mobile. Most of your users are going to come through the mobile. And that's why I think you have to have a mobile first approach now, whether you're B2B or you're B2C. So yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. Any coming to mind on your side? Just some questions to get people thinking.
Yeah, I think like again, it's thinking about the whole journey in a sort of congruent way, right? So again, it's a point I already touched on, but depending on the industry you're in, and the types of customers you're dealing with, get into their psychology. What are they expecting when they land on their site? So that has a few different, net benefits. One is you can obviously match your prospect experience to try and give them the exact flow that they want. Another side of it is that so let's say a marketing agency, just as an example, to do an example close from home, you can build, and it's a mistake we've made in years gone by, is you can build a website and you want to fit into this bucket, right? And maybe you get the design and the look and the feel to match that. But if you haven't set up your website in a way that Google wants to bucket that site, meaning a marketing agency, you're going to completely lose out on the reason you've done it in the first place, which is good rankings, good visitors, and so on. So really spending the time first and foremost to say, right, who is our business? What do people expect when they land on a site or a website like ours in the space we're in? Okay, how can we match that experience as much as possible? Is it a real educational led sell? Is it they're trying to get to the answer as quick as possible? Is it something else? Do we really looking at premium and sort of type positioning, or is it accessibility? There again, two nuanced ways of how you'd approach it. And based on that also, we want to make sure that not only does the prospect have that understanding once they land on the site in the first second, oh, yeah, this is where I should be, but also that Google and search rankings have an ability to know, okay, this is the bucket we need to put them in. So again, it's almost a psychology point more than anything else, is like just spending that initial time, it could be an hour long session internally of just mapping out the expectations of someone when they land on it to try and build out that overall congruence of the site.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a topic it probably warrants its own um, allocated time to it, is site infrastructure and how you can actually get a website ranked on the first page of Google, because it's a very foundational layer to, like, if you need to be, I suppose, intentional about it before you've even built the site. Is about your site map, your site structure, how you're going about topic clusters, how you're bringing the overall flow of the website. Because if you don't have that intention initially when you build it, and it's more of an afterthought once you've launched the site, you're actually already on the back foot. because then you have to start going back and changing stuff with the site again, which can lead to its own complexity. So definitely a topic that we should highlight in its own, give it a dedicated time.